What do you want to share about when we met?
Okay. I was in the Peace Corps in the early Kennedy years of Peace Corps in Pakistan. And when I came back, I decided to get a master's in education through Antioch, because I grew up in Seattle and I'd always been intrigued with Antioch College and the work-study travel aspect especially. So I ended up in their master's in teaching, which had an academic year in Washington, D.C. And David at the same time was working at the Friends Committee on National Legislation in Washington. So my advisor for my master's was a Quaker from New York who knew David and had come to Washington for a leadership seminar and invited me to join him for dinner. And at the dinner, David was helping to serve the food at William Penn House in Washington. And so Norm introduced us that evening over apple crisp. We still like apple crisp. And that was how we met.
So how did the relationship develop, and how did it go from there? One part in the book that I liked was that he made some comment about, you know, you taking part in this guy's life that was adventurous and dangerous and whatever. But tell me a little bit about the relationship.
Well, it was somewhat of a whirlwind, I would say. I was in this graduate program, and the last quarter of it was up in Putney, Vermont. And so while I was up in Putney, we decided that we would take a trip across the country, because my family are all in Washington State and his brother at that time was in California. So we met up in Cleveland, Ohio, and visited his grandma, and then we drove to the Tetons. And in the Tetons, both of us love the mountains and have been to the Tetons as kids. And we were hiking there way up high, and I often joked that I wasn't sure if I'd get back down to the lakes and the bottom of the mountain. But anyway, David asked me if I would marry him on that trip up in the Tetons. So I said, yeah, and still I wasn't thinking it was going to be that anytime soon, because we had met in, February or March?
January, I think.
And this was the summer. And we visited our family, and then I had to go back to start teaching in Washington, D.C. And then David's family, his parents, were about to move to, or were they already in Portland?
No.
Moved to Oregon. And his mother also had some health issues. And so it seemed like if we were going to get married, it would make more sense to get married before they left the East Coast. So we had a Quaker wedding in Middletown, Pennsylvania, not too far from Philadelphia, and where David had attended Quaker meeting. And
So did you know where this whole life was going to go at that time? Did you have
heavens
any idea?
no. Just both of us had interest and had overseas adventures, and that was one really strong connection, I think. And another was just the importance of family and friends. We both valued a lot relationships with other people, and so we just jumped in.
The one thing I would add is that after Norm Wilson introduced us, I had been living and thinking and praying and the Vietnam War kind of every moment of my life for those years. And meeting Jan, and she also liked outdoors, and so we started going to the National Arboretum and walking among the flowers and trees, and then canoeing on the Potomac, and it was just a wonderful part of life that I had been suffering from living the Vietnam War all the time. So that was really fun to do together.
Tell me a little bit about how she began working with you and getting involved in the kind of things that you were doing. When did that start? I mean, immediately?
Well, you can share about the White House as an example.
Yeah.
Why don't you introduce that then, David? The whole story of the White House, and then we'll let her.
Well, during the after Nixon became president, Quakers asked for an opportunity to meet with the president, about the Vietnam War. And Nixon had no interest in meeting with the Quakers, especially about the war. So Quakers decided to have a Quaker meeting for worship in front of the White House. And so Jan and I and our two children, who were 6 months and 2, went to have this meeting for worship, about 250 of us. And when the police came and we started worshiping, and our prayer was that we stop this insanity of killing, men, women, and children on the other side of the world because we didn't like their government. So when the police warned us that if we didn't leave, we would be arrested, no one left. We just continued the meeting for worship. And the police proceeded to arrest the rest of the 250 except for the 4 of us. And Jan, why don't you go ahead from there?
So we didn't really know what was going to happen. The police chief came and tried to persuade us to leave, and we said, we don't feel that we're doing anything wrong sitting here and praying, that we want to end the war. And finally he said we needed to get in the patrol car. I hadn't, up to that point, had never been arrested, so I didn't really know what to expect. And they drove us sort of across Washington to a police station in Georgetown and said get out, and said that they were not arresting us, that we just needed to leave. So we walked back to the White House thinking that we would sit down again and continue our meeting for worship, but they wouldn't let anyone anywhere near the sidewalk at that point.
Okay, now, David, tell me the story about the police chief that came to you and that led to your response, which was really good and important.
Yeah, the police chief spent, I think, close to half an hour trying to convince us to leave, and said, don't you love your children? And if you're arrested, your children will be taken away from you and put in juvenile hall. And you know what happens to children in juvenile hall. And we responded, well, of course we love our children, but we also love the children in Vietnam. And when our country stops bombing the children of Vietnam, we'll be happy to leave. The discussion wasn't getting anywhere, so as Jan says, we agreed that if he arrested us, that we would walk to the police car. So that's what we did. But, and then that, for some reason, the media thought that was very media-worthy, and it was the photograph of our family there in front of the White House, overshadowed by the police chief leaning over us, that went across the country, and so our friends sent us this photograph from their newspapers, and which is now in our children's baby books. But I think it's interesting that somehow a young family, standing up or praying for what they really believed in, publicly, somehow caught the attention of the media in a way that just ordinary Quakers sitting down and praying didn't. And I think a lot of people, when they kind of get beyond their college years and get married and settle down and say, well, we have to give up some of our idealistic ideas, like we're all brothers and sisters, and have responsibility not only to our immediate family, but to our family and the people in the rest of the world. We never got that idea. We kept onto those ideals, those beliefs as vital of who we were, and that's been part of what's been wonderful about being married to Jan. We've shared that commitment.
Well, when we left the Life Center in Philadelphia and came out west, we ended up in San Francisco, where David was offered a job at the American Friends Service Committee. And within a year, we proposed sharing that job, and we both worked at the service committee then for 15 plus years. And I felt strongly that while the kids were young, that one of us needed to be home. So generally I was not the one participating in actions that risked arrest. One of the exceptions to that is the Livermore Labs, which here it is right in our lap, the nuclear weapons being produced there, and relatively low risk situation in terms of arrest, although we did, at one time we spent 2 weeks in jail. But generally they would arrest us and book us and then just let us go, and it would end up being thrown out. So we generally participate in that together and have now for 20, 30, 40 years, I guess. And the annual Good Friday and also Hiroshima Day.
Yeah, 34 years.
So that's been really important. And we've, in recent years, with the drone program, that particularly speaks to me because of my having had the opportunity to live in Pakistan back in the 60s. It just is more real what's happening to people. And we've been involved here in California at Beale Air Force Base and also the Creech Air Force Base near Las Vegas, both of which are key players in the drone warfare that's going on in the Middle East. So,
Were there arrests at any of those?
yeah, we've been arrested in both places, but in the case of Beale, we went to court, but it was basically thrown out
At the last minute.
with community service. We were asking for a jury trial in order to be able to try and speak about the drone program, but we didn't have that opportunity
Well, we did speak about it.
in our statements in the court. But
Right.
yeah, and the same with Creech. Each year it's building, and we haven't been back the last few years, so we haven't been arrested there. But there were just, I think, 25 people arrested a week ago at Creech.
And we were arrested. It was the second arrest there, and spent a weekend in jail, which was,
The Las Vegas jail is not a pretty place.
well, the Washington, D.C. jail and the Las Vegas jail vied for most unwonderful experiences in my life.
Tell me about some of the trips you've taken. You've been to Russia. Where else have you traveled together?
Both David and I have a keen interest or feel ourselves as world citizens. I've often said that when people ask me where I'm from. I don't necessarily claim the United States. And so the fact that he had traveled in Russia and Eastern Europe and Cuba and various places before I met him, and I similarly had been off on adventures in different parts of the world, that was a strong attraction that we had to continue and wanted to continue, both for pleasure, like we just were in Switzerland this past summer and absolutely love being in the mountains there. It restores our soul. But also we did a citizen diplomacy trip to Iran a couple of years ago, and both of us had connections in Kosovo, the former Yugoslavia, actually didn't travel there together. One was there and the other one here. But it's been important. I like
And
to be a
Israel,
part of it.
Palestine.
Yeah, Israel, Palestine, India, the founding of the Nonviolent Peace Force, since India is close to my heart. I got in on that. And we often have people visiting us from all over the world, which is a way of bringing the world to us. And our daughter went in the Peace Corps also to Togo, West Africa, and our son, they both have traveled a lot. I'm very much a believer in jump on any opportunity that comes your way. You know, as a young person and all through your life, don't just hold back. It may not come your way again. And we've been very lucky. We came to California, we bought a house when they were very inexpensive. It's a 2-flat house and plus a basement living situation, and so many different friends have lived with us over the years. Many different projects have been incubated here. And the kids say, you know, they had the advantage of many role models. They weren't just stuck with David and I, but they had the opportunity to meet lots of people and get support and inspiration. And so I feel like that's been a key thing that even before we came to California, we were living in community in the Philadelphia Life Center. And that's a way of freeing parents up when you have young children. If you live in community with other people, then you can take turns. Somebody can be doing childcare and others can be out protesting or building something. So
What was that like for a young family, you know, with small children and other people? What was it like living in that? Because that's not a common occurrence.
yeah, a lot of people seem to think, you know, you should ask our kids, but I think overall it was very positive for all of us. I don't know why it scares people. I mean, we don't feel strongly that we have to have our own this, that, and the other. And it makes it possible to share a car or share a washing machine or share meal preparation and food shopping, all of it. It allows you to do different things with your time than if you're just a nuclear family. And usually it's the wife that's at home if you're living just by yourselves.
It's
It used to be. It's not now. Now you've got both parents working and lots more things to juggle. But
and I mean, as you kind of mentioned, for the last 40 years, we've had, you know, people living with us that were really doing, you know, most of them God's work. You know, working with the United Farm Workers or with the American Friends Service Committee or working for peace and justice in some way that couldn't afford regular rents. And so not only sharing the cost of living, but and reducing the cost of living for all of us, but really having a strong community of support has enabled us to do things that, you know, we wouldn't have been able to do just by ourselves.
one of the ways that I often describe our relationship is we both are Gandhi fans, but I think I'm kind of on one end of the spectrum and David's on the other, and we meet somewhere in the middle. I think it's important to do what they often call obstructive program, and to protest and to be at Livermore or to be at a drone base or whatever. But working for world peace is so far out there that it's hard for me to feel comfortable that I'm really making a difference, I guess is one way of saying it. So I tend to be towards the constructive program side of Gandhi, which was to create the world that you want to see, to build it. And I've spent most of my life working on either food access or more recently water access, both of those just essentials for everyone's livelihood all over the earth. And you know, if you organize a farmer's market, you're helping the Vietnamese farmers that have come to California, and they have maybe 1 acre, and they used to farm back in Vietnam. And so here we helped to form a marketing co-op, and then they were able to actually make a living by farming in California. And more recently in Africa, I've been helping to create a program that African women are training each other in how to build water systems, rainwater harvesting and storage tanks and biosand filters and toilets. And my role has just been as the kind of greasing the wheels, raising money, then finding a location and getting the people that come as trainees, and eventually we've trained both Kenyan and Ugandan women who are basically running the program now. So I'm stepping back from that.
Some people sometimes ask, how do you do this financially? And I think we've been really very lucky I think of our whole lives have been able to find things that we really believed in and wanted to do, and also then finding people that felt that was important enough they were willing to help support it financially. And I think it's harder now than it was 30, 40 years ago. But I think if anyone has a calling, this is work that really needs to be done, and people can understand that, you'll find a way to financially support it. In terms of reflections, I just feel grateful that Jan and I have been able to have our lives, live our lives in a way that we could have a loving family for ourselves, share that love and support with friends and family, a larger family, often in the household, and also to really act on our beliefs that we're all brothers and sisters around the world. And I think for anybody, if their actual brother or sister was being killed or somebody was threatening them, they would do what they could to try to stop that. And so that's been a part of what our lives are, is if we really believe that we're all brothers and sisters, we need to act to stop when people are senselessly being killed or slaughtered or bombed or droned or nuked. And to have the support community starting right in the home, so you're not feeling you're way off on left wing or somewhere doing this all alone. Having that support has been wonderful for me.
Your thoughts?
And I think as I felt strongly that I wanted to be home and be present for the kids when they were young, and encouraged David to do the things that he wanted to do, but I wasn't necessarily as much a part of them until the kids were like high school age. And then we could look at what things there were that we could do together. And still, I often have had my own projects, and we sort of trade back and forth as far as time and energy. But certainly I think the same goal of seeing the world as our family and wanting to do what we could to bring about change and to bring about a better quality of life for everyone has been a strong bond that's kept us going.
How do you feel about it at the end? Has it been a life well lived, worthwhile? How would you express that?
Yeah, I'm very
No.
Sorry. I feel lucky to have met David and found someone that I had as much in common with, and that we could find a way to express that in our lives. And I think sometimes it's been more one or the other of us, but that we've always been there for each other.
And we're both in our 70s now, but it's not like our life and life's work is over. And we're planning, hoping, the summer to go over to Russia for another trip. You know, what we were going through in the 60s in terms of the danger of nuclear war, we're right back there again with Russia. And both the United States and Russia and China are playing nuclear brinkmanship. And so we're going to go as a part of a small citizens diplomacy kind of group to talk with ordinary people and political leaders and see if we can somehow restore some sense of humanity and putting I think Americans need to put ourselves in the shoes of people in the other parts of the world. And the way the United States responded when the Soviets put missiles in Cuba, I mean, we just went through the roof. We're ready to start a nuclear war over that. And now the United States has our bombing planes and our tanks and our nuclear weapons right on the borders of the Soviet Union, and do war games, you know, on the border of North Korea, and are surrounding China with military bases, and we think that's our right. Well, anyway, so we're heading to Russia again to see what we can do to begin to try to reverse this insane train wreck that we're threatening the world with.